Summiting a mountain is never the real danger. It is coming back down. In 1865, 4 climbers died on the first descent of the Matterhorn, exposing a truth that still shapes high-altitude ambition today. Even now, decision-making accuracy can fall by half above 4,000 meters. If we have built new paths to the world's highest ground, why does every ascent still demand such a price? The answer starts here. On July 14, 1865, 7 climbers stood on the summit of the Matterhorn for the first time. Edward Whymper, the driving force behind the ascent, described the world spread out beneath their boots, an achievement that had eluded generations. But the mountain demanded its toll on the way down. The descent began with celebration, but quickly turned tense. Douglas Haddo, the least experienced in the party, lost his footing on a steep section. He slipped and struck Michel Croz, the lead guide. In an instant, both men were pulled from the ridge. Reverend Charles Hudson and Lord Francis Douglas, roped to Haddo and Croz, were yanked after them. 4 bodies fell together, tumbling hundreds of meters down the north face. The only thing that held back total disaster was a single rope, a reserve manila line thinner and weaker than the main climbing ropes. It snapped under the force, leaving Whymper and the Taugwalders clinging to the mountain, alive but separated from their companions forever. Later engineering analysis suggests that the dynamic load from 4 falling climbers, nearly 300 kilograms in total, generated forces of up to 2,000 kilograms, far beyond what the rope could bear. Whymper's own words would haunt every generation of climber that followed. There is no absolute safety in mountaineering. The top does not guarantee return. The Matterhorn's first ascent ended not with triumph, but with a lesson written in loss. A reminder that in the high places, the real test begins after the summit is reached. In the decades that followed the Matterhorn tragedy, the mountains drew a new breed of climber. The golden age of alpinism, spanning from 1854 to 1865, saw summits claimed not just for science or glory, but as a test of what was possible. The risks were woven into the culture. Climbers accepted that every ascent was an experiment, with their own bodies as the subject. Equipment offered little margin for error. Hemp ropes, prized for their flexibility, could only hold so much weight before snapping. Tests on period ropes show a breaking strength between 1,500 and 2,000 kilograms, when new but heavy use, knots, and weather exposure could cut that in half. Boots bristled with hammered nails for grip, but lacked the precision of modern rubber. Protection was basic, and every step was a gamble between grip and gravity. Yet ambition outpaced technology. Climbers like John Tyndall and Lucy Walker pushed into higher, thinner air, sometimes for days on end. As expeditions moved from the Alps to the Himalayas, the limits of the human body came into sharper focus. Above 8,000 meters, the area known as the death zone, oxygen is so scarce that the body can no longer acclimatize. Muscles waste, judgment falters, and even simple tasks become monumental. Controlled studies have measured a 20 to 50% drop in decision-making accuracy above 4,000 meters, even among experienced mountaineers. These early climbers normalized risk not by ignoring danger, but by accepting that survival depended on both skill and luck. The mountain did not care who reached the summit. The real measure was how a climber managed their own limits and whether they recognized the moment when ambition outstripped ability. Permits for Everest climbs have soared in the past decade, with Nepal alone issuing more than 600 each season. The summit push is no longer the domain of elite alpinists, but of guided teams organized by commercial operators who rely on the expertise and labor of Sherpa crews. Each client is paired with at least one Sherpa, sometimes 2, to manage the logistics of oxygen, fixed ropes, and personal safety. This system has made Everest more accessible, but it has also multiplied the number of people exposed to the mountain's dangers at the same time. On May 22, 2019, a queue formed just below the Hillary Step. Nearly 200 climbers stood shoulder to shoulder, clipped to a single fixed line waiting for their chance at the summit. Some spent 5 hours or more above 8,000 meters in the thin air of the death zone, unable to go up or down. 11 people died that season, many from exhaustion or exposure while stuck in the bottleneck. Social media posts from that day show climbers celebrating their achievement. Satellite logs and rescue reports tell a different story, showing delays, depleted oxygen, and rising risk with every minute spent at altitude. Despite the infrastructure, including ladders over crevasses, fixed ropes spanning hundreds of meters, and coordinated summit schedules, the mountain's capacity has not changed. Only the number of people on the route has changed. The Himalayan database tracks a 1 to 2% non-return rate for summit attempts on Everest, a figure that has barely shifted even as technology and guiding have advanced. More permits mean more climbers, but the exposure to risk grows with every additional body on the ridge. Descent is where the mountain claims most of its victims. The summit, for all its danger, is only halfway. Fatigue sets in after hours of effort, and even the strongest climbers find their muscles slow, their judgment clouded by thin air and exhaustion. On Mont Blanc, the statistics are stark. Over 100 climbers die every decade, most on the way down. Many of these are soloists or small teams, caught off guard by changing weather or a missed step on exposed ground. Rescue logs from PGHM, the Mountain Gendarmerie, tell the same story year after year: a slip on an icy slope, a wrong turn into a couloir, a body found far below the intended route. Above 4,000 meters, decision-making falters. Studies show a 20 to 50% drop in accuracy, even among experienced alpinists. The mountain offers no second chances. When something goes wrong, help is not guaranteed. Helicopters, the backbone of modern alpine rescue, have a hard ceiling. On Mont Blanc, pilots rarely risk flights above 4,500 meters, and in the Himalayas, the limit hovers around 6,000 meters. Beyond that, thin air steals both power and lift. For many, the only hope is self-rescue, navigating crumbling ridges and crevasses with fading strength. Guides and rescue pilots describe the same pattern: climbers who push for the summit, only to unravel on the descent. The failure point is not always technical skill. It is timing, energy, and the ability to recognize when enough is enough. The mountain does not distinguish between expert and amateur when fatigue takes over. In the end, survival depends on decisions made at the limit, long after the celebration has faded. Mountain guides describe accidents as the result of many small failures stacked together: forecasting gaps, misread weather, and the relentless drive to reach the top. They point to summit pressure from clients as a force that can push teams beyond safe limits, turning minor setbacks into full-blown crises. Critics push back, arguing that commercial guiding has changed the very nature of risk. When clients rely on guides for every decision, the responsibility for judgment and consequence shifts. The most dangerous climber, some say, is not the novice, but the one who believes the system will catch every mistake. In this debate, accountability blurs. Guides warn that exhaustion can override skill, while ethicists insist that no amount of infrastructure can replace personal responsibility. Both sides agree on one point: the mountain does not care who is to blame when something goes wrong. In July 2022, a glacier collapsed in the Italian Alps, killing 11 climbers without warning. Scientists traced the disaster to record heat waves and thawing permafrost, which loosened ice and rock that had held steady for centuries. Glaciologists from ETH Zurich now track a 20 to 30% increase in permafrost thaw across the Alps, with rockfall incidents up by 50% since the early 2000s. Route managers have closed classic ascents on peaks like Mont Blanc and the Matterhorn during the height of summer, citing unpredictable terrain and new hazards where once there was firm ground. In response, alpine authorities debate mandatory experience requirements and stricter permit systems. But the underlying threat remains. The mountains themselves are growing less stable, and no amount of planning can fully account for what the climate will do next. Today, more climbers than ever stand at the edge of risk, but the mountain's reality does not change for ambition or technology. As climate and crowds reshape every route, the true test remains internal: judgment, restraint, and responsibility. The future of climbing hinges on choices made long before the summit. Share your thoughts below.